I stood in my childhood dining room holding a manila envelope that contained enough evidence to destroy my family. My mother, Patricia, was sobbing into her hands while my father, Robert's face burned crimson with rage. My brother Derek sat frozen, staring at the scattered photographs and documents spread across the table. 3 years had passed since I'd built my success from nothing, and now they wanted to take credit for it. But tonight, surrounded by aunts, uncles, and cousins, at what was supposed to be grandmother's 80th birthday celebration, I was finally going to show everyone exactly how my parents sabotaged my future to protect Derek's fragile ego. The truth was about to shatter everything. 5 years earlier, when I was 19 and grinding through my sophomore year at Toledo Community College, that acceptance letter arrived like a miracle, wrapped in official letterhead. The Westfield Foundation scholarship interview invitation felt heavier than the paper it was printed on. I read it 3 times before the words sank in full ride to complete my engineering degree at any accredited university of my choice. My hands trembled as I calculated what this meant. No more 16-hour workdays split between classes and my overnight stocking job at the grocery warehouse. No more choosing between textbooks and groceries. No more watching my classmates discuss internships while I counted pennies for gas money. Our house in Toledo sat on a street where hope came in small doses. Dad worked the same auto parts factory line for 22 years, his hands permanently stained with grease and disappointment. Mom typed attendance records and answered phones at Lincoln Elementary, her dreams filed away in the same house cabinet as her student records. The dinner table that night held the usual suspects: leftover meatloaf, instant mashed potatoes, and the weight of unspoken financial stress. Derek picked at his food while scrolling through his phone, probably checking grades that never quite measured up to anyone's expectations, including his own. At 21, he was struggling through his 3rd attempt at basic chemistry at the same community college, where I maintained a 3.9 GPA. "I got some incredible news today, Abbai," I announced, sliding the letter across the scratched wooden surface. Mom glanced at the letterhead, her expression shifting from mild interest to something I couldn't quite read. "Westfield Foundation," she murmured, passing it to Dad. "That sounds important." Derek looked up from his phone for the first time in weeks. "What's that about?" "Full scholarship interview. If I get this, I can transfer to a 4-year university, finish my engineering degree without debt." The words tumbled out faster than I intended, fueled by excitement I'd been suppressing since opening the envelope. Dad handed the letter back without meeting my eyes. "Don't get your hopes up too high, son. These things usually go to kids with connections." "Or legacy students," Mom added quickly. "You know how these foundations work." The room fell silent except for Derek's nervous fidgeting with his phone case. He kept opening and closing the plastic cover, a habit from childhood that surfaced whenever he felt anxious. "When's the interview?" he asked, his voice unusually tight. 3 weeks from today, April 15th, 10 in the morning. I'd already memorized every detail. It's downtown at their headquarters building. April 15th? Mom repeated slowly, like she was committing the date to memory for reasons I couldn't fathom. "That's amazing, Maynard," Derek said, but his smile looked like it required physical effort. "Really amazing." The conversation shifted abruptly to Derek's upcoming important meeting with his academic advisor about changing majors again. Mom launched into an elaborate discussion about different career paths, while Dad nodded along with forced enthusiasm. My scholarship news evaporated from the table as quickly as it had arrived. Later that evening, I found Derek in our shared bedroom staring at his laptop screen with unusual intensity. We'd split the small space since childhood, our lives separated by an invisible line down the middle. My side held engineering textbooks, calculator, and carefully organized notes. His side looked like a tornado had hit a pre-med student's dorm room. "You okay?" I asked, settling at my desk to research the Westfield Foundation's history. "Yeah, just checking some stuff for tomorrow's advisor meeting." He closed the laptop quickly, too quickly for someone just browsing academic requirements. Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into interview preparation with the same intensity I applied to everything else. The Foundation's website revealed their focus on supporting first-generation college students in STEM fields. Perfect fit. Their previous recipients had gone on to impressive careers at major engineering firms, exactly the trajectory I dreamed about during those long warehouse shifts. Jessica Martinez, my girlfriend, since freshman orientation, helped me practice answers to potential questions. We'd found each other in calculus class, two scholarship kids determined to prove we belonged in engineering. She understood the weight of opportunity in ways my family never could. "Tell me about a time you overcame adversity," she said, reading from a list of common interview questions. "Working 2 jobs while maintaining honor roll, supporting myself since 16, watching my parents struggle financially, while my brother gets praised for barely passing his classes." The bitterness in my voice surprised us both. "Maybe phrase that differently, Jessica suggested gently. "Focus on your resilience, not family dynamics." She was right as usual. Jessica had a talent for seeing the bigger picture when my emotions clouded my judgment. Her own family had immigrated from Mexico when she was 8, building a successful restaurant through pure determination. They understood the value of education in ways mine seemed to resist. The night before the interview, I tried on my suit for the 3rd time. It was secondhand from Goodwill, carefully tailored by Mrs. Chen, who ran the alteration shop downtown. She'd refused payment, insisting that education was the best investment for a young person. "Looking sharp," Derek said from his bed, but something in his tone felt off. "Thanks, I'm nervous as hell." "You'll do great, you always do." I was adjusting my tie when I heard Derek on his phone in the hallway, speaking in hushed tones that carried the urgency of secrecy. The conversation ended abruptly when he noticed me listening. "Everything all right?" I asked. "Just academic advisor stuff. She likes to check in before big meetings." It was past 10 o'clock. No academic advisor called students that late. But I had bigger concerns than Derek's mysterious phone habits. Tomorrow would determine whether I continued scraping by or finally had the chance to build something meaningful. Sleep came in fragments. I dreamed about panel interviews, trick questions, and showing up unprepared. When morning arrived, I felt ready for anything except what was actually waiting for me. Mom insisted on driving me downtown, claiming she wanted to support my big day. This struck me as odd, since she'd never shown interest in my academic achievements before, but nerves made me grateful for any help. "We should leave early," I suggested over breakfast. "Traffic can be unpredictable, and I can't afford to be late." "Relax, sweetheart. I know exactly how long it takes to get there." Mom's confidence seemed misplaced for someone who rarely ventured downtown, but I trusted her maternal wisdom. The route she chose defied all logic. We wound through residential neighborhoods I'd never seen hit construction zones that forced lengthy detours, and encountered traffic patterns that seemed designed by someone actively trying to waste time. What should have been a 25-minute drive stretched into nearly an hour. "Mom, we're cutting this really close," I said, checking my phone for the dozenth time. 9:45, and we were still 15 minutes away. "Don't worry, they'll understand if you're a few minutes late. These Foundation people are reasonable." Her casual attitude about punctuality for the most important interview of my life felt completely wrong. Every minute we spent crawling through unnecessary side streets increased my panic. We finally pulled into the parking garage at 9:58. I grabbed my portfolio and sprinted toward the elevators, leaving Mom in the car, with her phone pressed to her ear, having what appeared to be an urgent conversation with someone. The Westfield Foundation occupied the entire 15th floor of a glass and steel building that screamed serious money. I burst through their reception doors at 10:07, sweating through my carefully pressed shirt. "Maynard Thompson for the 10 o'clock scholarship interview," I gasped to the receptionist. She consulted her computer with a frown. "You're listed here, but we've been waiting. The panel was expecting you to bring additional documentation that wasn't included with your application." Additional documentation. No one mentioned anything about extra materials. According to our records, you were supposed to submit updated transcripts, 3 additional recommendation letters, and a revised personal statement by yesterday. She turned her monitor toward me, showing an email thread I'd never seen before. The messages were sent from my email address, but I'd never written them. Someone had corresponded with the foundation staff promising documents I didn't know existed, discussing topics completely outside my academic experience. There must be some mistake. I never sent these emails. Well, you're here now. The panel is ready when you are. The interview room held 3 professionals who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Their questions focused on advanced topics that seemed more appropriate for someone with Derek's pre-med background than my engineering focus. They asked about medical device regulations, pharmaceutical patents, and healthcare technology applications. In your revised personal statement, you mentioned interest in biomedical engineering, said Dr. Williams, the foundation director. But your original application emphasized mechanical engineering. Can you explain this shift? I'd never written anything about biomedical engineering. My passion lay in automotive design and manufacturing efficiency. I think there might be some confusion. My focus has always been mechanical engineering. The panel exchanged glances that communicated disapproval and disappointment. They'd prepared for a different candidate, someone whose interests aligned with the mysterious revised application I'd supposedly submitted. Your updated recommendations were quite impressive, added Ms. Rodriguez, the program coordinator. Dr. Peterson from the hospital spoke very highly of your volunteer work in the cardiac unit. I've never volunteered at any hospital, and I don't know anyone named Dr. Peterson. The interview deteriorated rapidly. Every question revealed another discrepancy between who I actually was and who they expected to meet. My carefully prepared answers about automotive engineering fell flat, with a panel primed to discuss medical applications. 20 minutes later, I walked out knowing I'd failed spectacularly. Nothing had gone according to plan. Someone had systematically sabotaged my application, feeding the foundation false information that set me up for disaster. As I waited for the elevator, I glimpsed a familiar figure rounding the corner near the emergency exit stairs. Derek's distinctive blue jacket disappeared through the stairwell door. Before I could process what I'd seen, why would my brother be in this building? The ride home with Mom was torture. She offered hollow sympathy about interviews being learning experiences and assured me that everything happens for a reason. Her performance felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced consoling me before I'd even failed. That evening, Derek bounded through the front door with news that changed everything. "You'll never believe what happened today," he announced to the family gathered in the living room. "I got a call about a scholarship interview. The Westfield Foundation had a last-minute opening, and my advisor recommended me based on my pre-med coursework." Mom's face lit up with genuine excitement for the first time in months. "Derek, that's wonderful. When is it?" "Tomorrow morning. I know it's short notice, but apparently another candidate didn't work out, so they're looking for someone with medical background." Dad clapped Derek on the shoulder with pride that never seemed to surface for my achievements. "That's great, son. Those foundation people know talent when they see it." I sat frozen watching my family celebrate Derek's lucky break, while my own disaster smoldered in the background. The timeline was too convenient. The medical focus, too specific. The last-minute opening, too perfectly timed. Late that night, I snuck onto the family computer in the basement. Our shared email account held deleted messages and the trash folder fragments of correspondence I'd never seen before. Someone had been communicating with the Westfield Foundation for weeks, systematically destroying my application while building Derek's. The evidence was undeniable. Email chains showing coordination with foundation staff, fake recommendation letters written in Derek's voice, but sent from my account, application changes that shifted my focus from mechanical to biomedical engineering topics Derek could handle, but I couldn't. The betrayal cut deeper than any failure could. My own family had sabotaged my future to protect Derek's ego. The printed emails felt like poison in my hands as I climbed the stairs at 6 in the morning. Mom was already in the kitchen preparing Derek's breakfast with a level of care she'd never shown for my important days. "We need to talk," I said, placing the papers on the counter between us. Her face went pale as she recognized the email headers. "Maynard, I can explain. You destroyed my application. You coordinated with someone at the foundation to sabotage my interview so Derek could have a chance instead." Dad appeared in the doorway, drawn by the tension in my voice. "What's all this about?" "Your wife committed fraud to help our son cheat his way into a scholarship that belonged to me." Mom collapsed into a chair, her hands shaking as she reached for the evidence. "It wasn't supposed to hurt you? Derek needed this more than you do." "How could Derek possibly need it more? He's barely passing basic classes while I'm working 16-hour days to maintain honor roll." "You're strong enough to succeed without help," she said through tears. "Derek has been struggling and his confidence was already shattered. Another failure might have broken him completely." Dad read through the emails with growing comprehension. Instead of anger, his expression showed something worse: agreement. "Your mother did what she thought was best for the family," he said finally. "Derek threatened to drop out of school entirely if he didn't get one real opportunity to prove himself. So you stole mine? We gave him a chance to succeed. There's a difference." The twisted logic made my head spin. They'd convinced themselves that sacrificing my future was an act of love for Derek. My years of perfect grades, double shifts, and financial sacrifice meant nothing compared to protecting their struggling son from reality. Derek knew about this. Mom's silence answered my question. "He knew you were sabotaging me. He was desperate, Maynard. You have to understand, his whole identity was wrapped up in being the smart one, the one who was going to become a doctor. When his grades started slipping, he couldn't handle the idea of failing again." I thought about all those years of being compared to Derek, of my achievements being dismissed because they came too easily. Now I understood the real family dynamic. Derek was the investment they were trying to protect, while I was the expendable resource. "You have no idea what you've done to me." "You'll find another way," Dad said. "You always do. Derek doesn't have your natural abilities." That afternoon, Derek returned home with news that he'd been awarded the scholarship. The family celebration felt like a funeral for my dreams. Relatives called to congratulate him. Neighbors stopped by to share in the excitement. Everyone praised Derek's turnaround and my parents' dedication to his success. I was expected to smile and offer congratulations. When I refused, I became the villain in their story. "I can't believe you're being so selfish," Mom said as the party continued around us. "This is your brother's moment. Can't you be happy for him?" "Happy that he stole something that belonged to me?" "Nobody stole anything. Derek earned this scholarship through his hard work and potential." "He earned it through fraud." "That's enough," Dad interjected. "I won't have you destroying your brother's confidence with jealous accusations." Jessica arrived later that evening to find me sitting on the front porch, unable to face the celebration inside. She took one look at my expression and sat down beside me without saying a word. When I finally told her everything, her reaction was swift and decisive. "This is criminal. They committed fraud against a scholarship foundation. They're my family. They betrayed you in the worst possible way. No real family destroys one child's future to prop up another." She was right, but accepting the truth meant acknowledging that everything I'd believed about family loyalty was a lie. The people who were supposed to protect and support me had actively worked to destroy my opportunities. The breaking point came during Derek's acceptance party the following weekend. Extended family filled the house celebrating his amazing turnaround and bright future. I stood in the corner watching people praise achievements built on my stolen opportunity. "Aren't you proud of your brother?" asked Aunt Susan, my mother's sister who worked at the Scholarship Foundation. The connection hit me like a physical blow. Aunt Susan had access to applications, interview schedules, panel questions. She was the inside source who'd made this sabotage possible. Extremely proud, I said with a smile that felt like broken glass. That night, Mom cornered me in the kitchen after the last guests had left. I know you're upset, but you need to understand something. Derek looks up to you even if he doesn't show it. This scholarship isn't just about his future. It's about proving he can measure up to his brilliant little brother. By cheating, by finally having a real chance to succeed, you've always made everything look effortless. Derek has worked twice as hard for half the results. So you decided to level the playing field by destroying my opportunities. We decided to help our struggling child before he gave up entirely. You're strong enough to overcome this setback. Derek might not survive another failure. I stared at this woman who'd raised me, trying to recognize any trace of the mother I'd thought I knew. In her mind, she'd performed an act of love. In reality, she'd committed an unforgivable betrayal that would poison our relationship forever. I want you to know that your refusal to support Derek through this is tearing this family apart, she said, as I headed toward the stairs. People will remember your selfishness long after they forget the details of how Derek got his chance. The next morning, I called Jessica and asked if her offer to help was still open. Her family's restaurant needed a weekend server, and I needed distance from a house that no longer felt like home. You can stay in our guest room as long as you need, she said. My parents consider you family anyway. The irony wasn't lost on me. A family that wasn't biologically mine offered more support than the one that shared my DNA. As I packed my essential belongings, Derek appeared in the doorway, looking genuinely stricken. I never wanted this to happen, he said quietly. But you let it happen. I was scared, Maynard. You don't understand what it's like being the disappointment when your brother excels at everything. Now you'll never know if you could have succeeded on your own. He had no answer for that, and neither did I. The damage was done, and we all had to live with the consequences. That evening, as I carried my suitcase to Jessica's car, Mom made one final attempt to guilt me into staying. You're abandoning your family when they need you most, she called from the front porch. Your brother is finally getting a chance to build something meaningful, and you're walking away out of spite. Neighbors heard every word, just as she intended. By morning, half the street would know that ungrateful Maynard Thompson had abandoned his family, rather than celebrate his brother's success. But I knew something they didn't. I was walking away from people who had proven they would sacrifice my future without hesitation. And I was walking toward a life built on my own merits, whatever that might cost. Jessica's family treated my situation like a temporary inconvenience, rather than a catastrophic failure. Her father, Carlos, offered me full-time hours at their restaurant while I finished my degree, and her mother, Elena, insisted I take meals home each night. They understood struggle in ways my biological family had forgotten. Education is the only thing they cannot take from you, Elena said, in her accented English as she packed leftovers into containers. You finish school, you build career, you prove what you are worth. My new reality involved 40-hour weeks washing dishes and bussing tables while carrying 18 credit hours of engineering coursework. Sleep became a luxury I scheduled in 3-hour blocks between obligations. The scholarship money that should have covered tuition instead went toward Derek's prestigious university transfer, leaving me to scrape together community college costs through restaurant wages and student loans. Word of my abandonment spread through Toledo's tight-knit neighborhoods like gossip always did. Former family friends crossed streets to avoid conversations about why I'd moved out. People who'd known me since childhood now saw me as the ungrateful son who couldn't celebrate his brother's success. Mom crafted a narrative that painted Derek as the victim of my jealousy. In her version, I'd always resented Derek's academic potential and finally revealed my true nature when he achieved something meaningful. She never mentioned the sabotage, the fraud, or the betrayal. Just a bitter, younger brother who couldn't handle his siblings' triumph. The isolation was brutal during those first 6 months. Holidays came and went without invitations. Birthday cards stopped arriving. Even my grandmother, who'd always been my biggest supporter, began treating me with cool distance during our chance encounters at the grocery store. "Your parents are heartbroken," she told me one afternoon in the cereal aisle. "Derek says you've been spreading lies about how he got his scholarship." Has anyone asked for my side of the story? Sometimes families go through difficult periods. The important thing is forgiveness and moving forward. I realized then that the truth didn't matter to people who'd already chosen their version of events. My family had written me out of their story, casting Derek as the redemptive hero and me as the obstacle to his success. But something unexpected happened during my exile. I discovered what I was actually capable of when necessity replaced comfort. Working nights forced me to optimize my study time during the day. Financial pressure motivated me to pursue paid tutoring opportunities that enhanced my own understanding while earning extra income. Social isolation drove me to focus entirely on academic and career development. Jessica watched my transformation with mixture of pride and concern. "You're working yourself to exhaustion," she observed during one of our rare shared meals. "I'm building something that belongs to me." And I was. Each semester, my grades climbed higher despite the increased workload. Professors began recommending me for research positions. My tutoring clients spread word about my effectiveness, creating more demand than I could satisfy. Meanwhile, reports about Derek's progress filtered back through mutual acquaintances. The transition to university life wasn't going smoothly. Advanced coursework that looked impressive on a scholarship application proved challenging in practice. Professors expected preparation and engagement that Derek's previous academic experience hadn't developed. He struggled with organic chemistry, the foundation course for serious pre-med students. Physics concepts that should have been familiar from high school required extensive remediation. Study habits that worked for community college proved inadequate for competitive university environment. More concerning were rumors about Derek's social life. The pressure of maintaining his scholarship GPA while adjusting to higher academic demands had driven him towards stress relief that threatened his academic standing. Party photos appeared on social media showing behavior inconsistent with serious medical school preparation. I felt no satisfaction learning about Derek's struggles. If anything, watching him squander the opportunity they'd stolen from me felt worse than my own losses. The scholarship could have changed my life trajectory in ways that went beyond financial relief. For Derek, it seemed to represent validation rather than genuine academic pursuit. 3 years passed in a blur of relentless work and steady progress. I transferred to Toledo University with a near-perfect GPA and recommendations from professors who understood my work ethic. Student loans covered tuition, while restaurant wages handled living expenses, but I was building towards something sustainable. Jessica graduated with honors and accepted a position at an aerospace engineering firm in Cleveland. Our relationship deepened as we supported each other through the challenges of first-generation college students entering competitive professional fields. Her family continued treating me like an adopted son, providing stability my biological family had withdrawn. My own career momentum accelerated rapidly once I entered the professional environment. Engineering firms valued the practical experience I'd gained through necessity. Managers appreciated the resilience and problem-solving abilities developed through years of balancing multiple obligations. Skills that my family had never recognized became valuable assets in the workplace. Within 18 months of graduation, I'd earned 2 promotions and was leading project teams on significant automotive industry contracts. My salary exceeded what Derek would make for years, even if he successfully completed medical school. The financial security I dreamed about during those warehouse shifts became reality through pure determination rather than family support. Jessica and I moved in together, splitting our time between Cleveland and Toledo as our careers required. We talked about marriage children and building lives that honored our family's sacrifices while standing on our own achievements. The future looked bright in ways I'd barely dared imagine during those dark months after the scholarship betrayal. But the past wasn't finished with me yet. The first sign of coming trouble was an invitation to my cousin Marcus's wedding. The envelope arrived at my apartment addressed in my aunt's careful handwriting, the first direct contact from my extended family since I'd moved out 3 years earlier. Jessica found me staring at the invitation like it might explode. "You should go," she said, after I explained the significance. Maybe enough time has passed for people to see the situation more clearly. Or maybe they want me there so they can continue the narrative about the prodigal son who finally came to his senses. What's the worst that could happen? You confirm that you're better off without them, and we leave early. She was right as usual. I'd built a successful life independent of their approval or support. Facing them now wouldn't diminish what I'd accomplished, and hiding indefinitely felt like admitting guilt for crimes I hadn't committed. The wedding was held at the Hilton downtown, the same building where I'd interviewed for the scholarship years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me as I adjusted my tie in the bathroom mirror, remembering the nervous kid who'd prepared so desperately for an opportunity that was already stolen. The reception ballroom filled with faces I'd known since childhood. Some people approached cautiously, offering polite congratulations on my engineering career. Others maintained obvious distance, unsure how to navigate the family drama they'd heard about but never fully understood. Derek appeared genuinely happy to see me, which caught me off guard. He'd completed his degree with mediocre grades, but was working at Toledo Hospital in some administrative capacity while figuring out next steps. Medical school applications had been unsuccessful, but he seemed to have found peace with alternative paths. "I'm glad you came," he said during a quiet moment between toasts. "I've been wanting to talk to you about everything that happened. This probably isn't the time or place. I know I screwed up, the scholarship, the way it all went down. I've been carrying that guilt for 3 years." His apology felt genuine, but it couldn't undo the damage or restore the opportunities that had been lost. We were different people now, shaped by experiences that might never have occurred if the original betrayal hadn't forced us down separate paths. Mom and Dad maintained cordial distance throughout the evening, acknowledging my presence without engaging in meaningful conversation. They looked older, more worn down than I remembered. Dad's factory had downsized, eliminating his department supervisor position. Mom's hours at the elementary school had been cut due to budget constraints. As the evening progressed, I began overhearing fragments of conversation that made my blood run cold. Near the bar, Dad was talking quietly with my uncle about opportunities and second chances. Mom was discussing Derek's business ideas with Aunt Susan, the same woman who'd facilitated the scholarship fraud. Plan B. I heard Dad say to someone whose voice I didn't recognize, "Derek's got connections from his hospital work, and Maynard's always been good with numbers. Time to bring the family back together for something that benefits everyone." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't a coincidental wedding invitation or an attempt at reconciliation. They'd orchestrated my presence here to set up their next manipulation. I found Jessica at our table, elegant in the blue dress she'd bought specifically for tonight. "We need to leave," I said quietly. "Now." "What happened?" "They're planning something. This whole invitation was a setup for their next scheme." As we gathered our things, I noticed Derek watching us from across the room with an expression that mixed guilt and desperation. Whatever they were planning, he was part of it, and he knew I'd figured it out. The drive home was silent until Jessica finally asked the question I'd been dreading. "What do you think they want?" "Money," I said simply. "Derek's opportunity got wasted. Their financial situation is deteriorating, and they know I've been successful. They want me to fund whatever comes next. And if you refuse, then they'll try to destroy what I've built, just like they destroyed the scholarship opportunity. Except this time I'm ready for them." The family meeting request arrived exactly 1 week after the wedding, delivered through Derek's carefully worded text message that emphasized important family matters and moving forward together. They wanted to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown where public setting would theoretically keep emotions in check. I arrived early and chose a table near the back where conversations couldn't be easily overheard. Derek entered first, looking nervous and avoiding eye contact. Mom and Dad followed, wearing expressions of forced pleasantness that didn't reach their eyes. Thank you for coming," Mom began, as if I'd had any real choice in the matter. "We've been thinking a lot about family since the wedding, and we realize it's time to heal some old wounds." "What do you want?" I asked, cutting through the diplomatic preamble. Dad leaned forward, adopting the serious tone he'd used for major household announcements when I was younger. "Derek has developed a business opportunity that could benefit the whole family. We'd like you to consider investing in his future, the way we've all invested in yours over the years." The audacity was breathtaking. They genuinely believed they'd invested in my success rather than actively sabotaging it. "What kind of business opportunity?" Derek cleared his throat nervously. "Medical equipment sales? Through my hospital connections, I've identified gaps in their current supplier relationships. With the right startup capital, I could establish a company that provides better service and competitive pricing." He handed me a folder containing what appeared to be a legitimate business plan. Financial projections, market analysis, supplier contacts, and customer testimonials from his hospital colleagues. The presentation was more professional than anything Derek had produced during his academic career. "How much startup capital are we talking about?" $150,000, Dad said without flinching. "That covers initial inventory, office space, vehicle, and operating expenses for the first year." The number was substantial but not impossible given my current savings and credit capacity. What bothered me wasn't the amount but the presumption that I owed them this investment. "And what makes you think I should fund Derek's business venture?" Mom's expression shifted slightly, revealing the calculation behind her maternal facade. "After everything this family has done for you, I would think you'd want to help your brother succeed." What exactly has this family done for me? "We raised you, supported you through school, taught you the values that made you successful." Her voice carried the wounded tone of a misunderstood martyr. "You sabotaged my scholarship interview to protect Derek's ego. I've supported myself financially since age 16 while maintaining better grades than he ever achieved. You actively worked to destroy my opportunities when they conflicted with his needs." Derek winced at the blunt summary, but Dad's expression hardened. "That's ancient history. We're talking about building something together now." Based on what Derek couldn't maintain a scholarship GPA, couldn't get into medical school, and has no business experience beyond entry-level hospital work, why would I risk my savings on a venture that's statistically likely to fail? "Because he's your brother," Mom said simply. "Because family means helping each other succeed. Family means protecting and supporting each other's dreams. You destroyed mine without hesitation when it suited your purposes." The conversation deteriorated rapidly from there. Mom cried about holding grudges and refusing to forgive. Dad accused me of selfishness and arrogance. Derek sat silently, occasionally offering weak defenses of his business plan when pressed for specifics. When emotional manipulation failed to produce the desired result, they shifted strategies with practiced efficiency. You need to understand something," Dad said, his tone becoming ominous. "Your success hasn't gone unnoticed in this community. People are starting to ask questions about how you advanced so quickly in your career." "What kind of questions?" "Academic integrity questions. Professional ethics concerns. Whether someone who'd abandon his family during their time of need might also cut corners in other areas of life." The implication was clear, but not yet explicitly threatening. I maintained steady eye contact while my pulse accelerated. Mom picked up the thread with apparent reluctance. "My sister still works at the Westfield Foundation. She mentioned that some of Derek's former classmates have been asking questions about grade inflation and recommendation letter authenticity during the scholarship process. Now we were entering dangerous territory. They weren't just implying I'd cheated. They were threatening to fabricate evidence that I had. Joaquin, Susan could probably clarify any confusion about academic records if the right questions were asked. Nate, Dad added casually. Of course, that might raise uncomfortable questions for everyone involved. Are you threatening me? We're explaining the consequences of refusing to support your family, Mom said with false sincerity. When people start investigating academic fraud, they often discover other irregularities. Professional licenses can be affected. Security clearances might be reviewed. Employment opportunities could dry up. Derek finally spoke, his voice barely audible. They just want you to consider the investment. Nobody's threatening anything. But they absolutely were threatening everything. They'd identified the one vulnerability that could destroy the career I'd built through legitimate achievement, false accusations of academic dishonesty that would be difficult to disprove and devastating to survive. Your boss at the engineering firm might be interested to know about some of the grade discrepancies from your college transcripts, Dad continued, especially if those concerns came from credible sources like Scholarship Foundation administrators. You're talking about committing fraud to destroy my career unless I fund Derek's business scheme. We're talking about protecting family interests and making sure everyone's success benefits the whole group, Mom corrected. The way families are supposed to work. I stood to leave, recognizing that further discussion would only provide them with more opportunities to refine their threats. Think carefully about your decision, Dad called after me. Your career depends on maintaining the right relationships with the right people. The drive home felt surreal. In 30 minutes, my parents had moved from emotional manipulation to explicit blackmail, with the casual efficiency of practiced criminals. They weren't just asking for money. They were threatening to destroy my professional reputation unless I complied with their demands. Jessica found me sitting in our kitchen at midnight staring at Derek's business plan like it contained hidden secrets. How did it go? They're trying to blackmail me into funding Derek's company. If I refuse, they'll spread false accusations about academic fraud to destroy my career. Her reaction was swift and decisive. We call a lawyer tomorrow morning. It's my word against theirs. Susan works at the Scholarship Foundation and could fabricate evidence that would be difficult to dispute. Even if I eventually prove innocence, the damage to my reputation could be permanent. So what's the alternative? Give them money and hope they don't make additional demands later. She was right, of course. Paying extortion rarely satisfied extortionists. This would be the first of many demands, each one larger than the last, each one justified by family loyalty and past grievances. But I needed proof of their criminal intentions before involving law enforcement. Accusations of blackmail would be difficult to prove without evidence, especially when made against family members who could claim misunderstanding or emotional miscommunication. The solution came to me during my morning jog. If they wanted to play family politics and make threats, I'd give them exactly what they were asking for: a family meeting, where they could explain their position clearly and definitively. With recording equipment hidden in my jacket pocket, of course. The trap was set with a single text message. I'm willing to discuss the investment opportunity further. Let's meet again this weekend to work out the details. Derek's relieved response came within minutes. They thought they'd broken me down through intimidation and threat. Instead, they'd provided me with the motivation to document their criminal behavior and prepare for the war they'd chosen to start. By the time our next meeting concluded, I'd have enough evidence to protect myself and destroy them. The only question was whether I'd have the courage to use it when the moment came. The Monday morning call from Human Resources felt like falling through ice. Sandra Williams, our company's HR director, requested a meeting to discuss concerns that had been brought to her attention regarding my academic credentials. What kind of concerns am I asked, though I already knew the answer. anonymous information suggesting possible irregularities in your transcripts, and recommendation letters from college. I'm sure it's nothing serious, but we need to address these allegations properly. My parents had made good on their threat before our next meeting could even occur. The anonymous tip they'd promised was already working its way through corporate channels designed to create maximum damage while maintaining their deniability. Can you tell me what specifically was alleged? Grade manipulation, falsified recommendation letters, and possible bribery of scholarship committee members. Again, I'm confident these are unfounded accusations, but company policy requires investigation of any academic integrity concerns. I understand. What do you need from me? Complete academic records from all institutions, attended contact information for professors who wrote recommendations, and any documentation related to scholarships or academic honors received. How long do I have to provide this information? 2 weeks should be sufficient. And Maynard, don't let this worry you too much. False accusations happen especially when people achieve rapid career advancement. We'll sort this out quickly. But worry was exactly what I should be doing. Even false accusations could destroy careers through the investigation process alone. Companies avoided controversy by distancing themselves from employees under academic integrity review. Competitors would hear rumors and factor them into future opportunities. The damage began immediately, regardless of eventual vindication. I called in sick for the rest of the week and devoted myself entirely to building a defense against my family's attack. Jessica took emergency leave from her own job to help coordinate our response. We need documentation of everything, she said, transforming our dining room into a war room, covered with timelines, phone records, and legal research. The scholarship application, the sabotage, their recent threats, every piece of evidence that proves their criminal behavior. The Westfield Foundation proved surprisingly cooperative when I explained the situation to their compliance officer, Martin Rodriguez. Academic integrity investigations were serious business for scholarship organizations, and he wanted to resolve any questions quickly. We've actually been reviewing several awards from that time period, he admitted during our phone conversation. There were some irregularities in the application process that raised internal concerns. What kind of irregularities? Email communications that didn't match applicant writing styles, recommendation letters with suspicious formatting, and application changes that seemed professionally orchestrated rather than student-generated. My heart raced as I realized the scope of what Martin was describing. The scholarship fraud hadn't been limited to my case alone. How many applications were affected? At least 6 over a 3-year period. All involved applicants with connections to our processing staff, and all resulted in awards that didn't align with the Foundation's stated selection criteria. Are you willing to provide documentation of these irregularities for legal purposes? Absolutely. We're cooperating fully with any investigations into fraudulent application practices. Martin's records painted a devastating picture of systematic corruption involving Aunt Susan's privileged access to Foundation systems. Derek's scholarship wasn't an isolated incident of family favoritism. It was part of a larger pattern of fraud that had affected multiple students and violated federal educational assistance regulations. But I needed more than documentary evidence to protect myself from ongoing threats. I needed their blackmail attempts recorded in their own voices, captured with enough clarity to convince law enforcement and corporate investigators. The private investigator Jessica found specialized in digital evidence recovery and corporate security. David Chen had 15 years of experience with white-collar crime cases and understood the nuances of family-based extortion schemes. Your parents made a tactical error by threatening your career through false academic accusations, he explained during our initial consultation. That's a federal crime when it involves educational fraud allegations. If we can document their threats and connect them to the scholarship irregularities, you'll have a strong criminal case. What do you need from me? Permission to recover deleted communications from your family's digital devices, access to their email accounts if possible, and recorded evidence of their current blackmail attempts. The technical aspects of evidence gathering proved more complex than television crime shows suggested. Legally admissible recordings required careful attention to state wiretapping laws. Digital evidence needed proper chain of custody documentation. Witness statements required corroboration through independent sources. But David's team was thorough and experienced. Within a week, they'd recovered the deleted email chains between my parents and Aunt Susan that detailed not just my scholarship sabotage, but several other fraudulent schemes involving Derek's academic career. The evidence was overwhelming. Patricia and Robert Thompson hadn't simply manipulated a single scholarship opportunity. They'd engaged in sustained academic fraud spanning multiple years and affecting numerous victims. "This is bigger than family blackmail," David explained as we reviewed the recovered files. "Your aunt was selling access to scholarship information and application manipulation services. Your parents were repeat customers who used her services to benefit Derek throughout his academic career." How many other families were involved? At least 12 that we can document. The total value of fraudulently obtained scholarships and academic opportunities exceeds $500,000. I felt sick reading through the evidence. Derek's entire academic career had been built on systematic cheating, orchestrated by my parents, and enabled by my aunt's position at the foundation. Every achievement, every opportunity, every advancement had been purchased through corruption. More disturbing was the discovery that they'd also worked to sabotage other students who competed with Derek for opportunities. My case wasn't unique. I was just the family member who'd been sacrificed to protect their investment in Derek's artificial success. "Are you prepared to pursue criminal charges?" David asked. "This level of evidence could result in significant prison sentences for conspiracy, fraud, and extortion." The weight of that decision crushed me. Sending my parents to prison would destroy what remained of our family relationships. Derek's career would collapse once his fraudulent academic history became public. Extended family members who'd been affected by their schemes would face their own legal consequences. But allowing them to continue their threats meant accepting permanent victimization. Other families would suffer the same manipulations I'd endured. The corruption would spread until someone with courage finally exposed it. Jessica helped me reach the decision during a late-night conversation in our kitchen. "What kind of person do you want to be?" she asked simply. "Someone who enables criminal behavior to preserve family comfort, or someone who stands up for justice regardless of personal cost?" "I want to be someone who protects innocent people from what happened to me." "Then you know what you have to do." The next morning, I called Derek to arrange our delayed family meeting about his business investment. My phone's recording app was ready, David's surveillance team was positioned, and law enforcement had been briefed about the expected criminal admissions we hoped to capture. "I've been thinking about your proposal," I told Derek. "Let's meet this weekend and work out the details. Bring Mom and Dad so we can discuss this as a family." "Really, that's fantastic, Maynard. I knew you'd come around once you understood the opportunity." What Derek didn't understand was that he'd just agreed to participate in the final evidence-gathering session that would expose years of criminal behavior and send several family members to prison. The meeting was scheduled for Sunday afternoon at the same coffee shop where they'd first threatened me. By Sunday evening, their lives would be permanently changed, and mine would finally be free from their manipulative control. Justice was coming whether they were prepared for it or not. Grandmother's 80th birthday party was supposed to be a celebration of family legacy and shared memories. Instead, it became the courtroom where 3 generations of lies finally faced judgment. I arrived at the community center carrying the manila envelope that would change everything. Inside were recordings of my parents' blackmail threats, evidence of their systematic scholarship fraud, and documentation of their attempts to destroy my career when I refused their demands. The family gathered around tables decorated with photos from 8 decades of birthdays, graduations, and milestones. Children ran between chairs while adults shared stories about grandmother's remarkable life. Everyone seemed genuinely happy to be together, including relatives who'd shunned me for years, following my supposed abandonment of family values. Derek approached me cautiously, still believing that our upcoming business discussion would result in the funding he desperately needed. "Thanks for reconsidering everything," he said quietly. "I know we've had our differences, but this opportunity could really change things for our family." "It's definitely going to change things," I agreed. Mom and Dad maintained polite distance throughout the early festivities, but I caught them watching me with expressions that mixed hope and calculation. They thought their threats had broken my resistance and restored their control over my decisions. Aunt Susan avoided me entirely, perhaps sensing that her role in the scholarship fraud might finally be exposed. Her nervous energy was palpable as she helped arrange the birthday cake and coordinate group photographs. As the formal celebration concluded and family members began gathering for grandmother's traditional speech, I stood and requested everyone's attention. "Mart, before we hear from grandmother, I'd like to share something important with the family." I announced, my voice carrying clearly across the quiet room. 43 pairs of eyes turned toward me with curiosity and mild concern. Several younger cousins stopped their games to listen. Uncle Richard paused his conversation with the other men. Even the small children seemed to sense that something significant was about to happen. 5 years ago, my parents sabotaged my scholarship interview to protect Derek's ego and advance his academic career through fraudulent means. I began, my voice steady despite the magnitude of what I was revealing. The room erupted in confused murmurs and shocked gasps. Mom's face went white while Dad's expression darkened with rage. Derek looked like he'd been physically struck. "That's enough," Dad barked, rising from his chair. "This isn't the time or place for your jealous accusations." "Actually, it's the perfect time and place," I replied, opening the manila envelope. "Because everyone in this room deserves to know the truth about how Derek's achievements were purchased through systematic fraud involving multiple family members." I began methodically presenting the evidence, reading key excerpts from the recovered emails between Mom, Dad, and Aunt Susan, their detailed plans to sabotage my application, their coordination with foundation staff to manipulate Derek's interview questions, their payment of consultant fees using Derek's scholarship money. These communications prove that Patricia and Robert Thompson conspired with Susan Martinez to commit educational fraud affecting not just me, but at least 11 other scholarship applicants over a 3-year period. I continued ignoring the chaos erupting around me. Extended family members who dismissed my earlier accusations now listened with growing horror as I documented years of criminal behavior. Uncle Michael, a retired police officer, studied the printed emails with professional attention. Cousin Sarah, a high school teacher, recognized the severity of academic integrity violations. Grandmother sat in stunned silence, her birthday celebration transformed into a family tribunal. The total value of fraudulently obtained scholarships and educational opportunities exceeds $500,000. I announced, producing the private investigator's summary report. Derek's entire academic career was built on systematic cheating that violated federal educational assistance regulations. Derek finally spoke, his voice breaking with emotion. "I never wanted any of this. I tried to tell them it was wrong, but they said it was the only way I could compete with you. You knew about the scholarship sabotage before it happened. I knew they were planning something, but I didn't understand how far they'd go. I thought maybe they'd just put in a good word or help with my application essay." Mom collapsed into tears, finally acknowledging the scope of what they'd done. "We were trying to save Derek from another failure. We were trying to protect our family." You were committing crimes?" Uncle Michael interjected sharply. "Susan, you used your position at the foundation to sell scholarship access. That's conspiracy to commit fraud." Aunt Susan had been silent throughout my presentation, but now she spoke with desperate intensity. "Everything we did was to help family members succeed. These scholarships were going to waste on kids who didn't appreciate them. That said, they were going to qualified candidates who earned them through legitimate achievement," I replied. "Derek wasn't qualified, which is why you had to manufacture his credentials and sabotage his competition." The evidence continued mounting as I played audio recordings of their recent blackmail attempts, their threats to destroy my career unless I funded Derek's business, their promises to fabricate additional academic fraud allegations, their casual discussion of using family connections to manipulate my professional reputation. And this is extortion, declared Uncle Michael, his law enforcement background, making him the unofficial authority on criminal behavior. They're not just asking for money, they're threatening to destroy your livelihood if you refuse. Grandmother finally spoke her voice, carrying the weight of 8 decades of family experience. I raised you children to protect and support each other, she said slowly, looking directly at Mom and Dad. What you've described isn't family loyalty. It's criminal behavior that destroyed innocent people's opportunities and corrupted everything this family is supposed to represent. The room fell silent, except for Mom's continued sobbing. Everyone understood that we'd crossed a line from family disagreement into criminal territory that would require legal resolution. Dad made one final attempt to control the narrative, his voice rising with desperate anger. You're destroying this family over ancient history that doesn't matter anymore. Derek's sorry, we're all sorry, but tearing us apart won't change what happened. What's going to change is that no other families will suffer what you put me through, I replied firmly. Criminal behavior has consequences regardless of family relationships. At that moment, as if summoned by my words, Detective Maria Santos from Toledo Police Department entered the community center. I'd contacted her before the party, explaining that I would be presenting evidence of an ongoing criminal conspiracy and requesting police presence for safety and documentation purposes. Detective Santos, I said, approaching the uniformed officer. Thank you for coming. I believe you'll find tonight's admissions quite relevant to the case we discussed. Dad's face went completely pale as he realized the scope of what was happening. This wasn't just family confrontation. It was a carefully orchestrated evidence-gathering operation that had captured their criminal admissions in front of multiple witnesses. Robert and Patricia Thompson. Detective Santos announced formally, "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, educational fraud, and extortion. Susan Martinez, you're also under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and abuse of public trust." The arrests unfolded with surreal efficiency. Miranda rights were read while family members watched in stunned disbelief. Derek sat motionless, understanding that his own future was collapsing along with his parents' freedom. As my parents were led away in handcuffs, Mom turned to me with the expression of complete devastation. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she said bitterly. "You've destroyed your family to prove a point." "I've protected other families from becoming your victims," I replied. "The destruction was your choice, not mine." 6 months later, the legal consequences were fully resolved. Mom received 18 months in federal prison and 5 years probation for conspiracy to commit educational fraud. Dad got 12 months and restitution payments to affected scholarship recipients. Aunt Susan lost her job and received 2 years probation plus permanent disbarment from educational assistance programs. Derek faced no criminal charges but agreed to repay his fraudulent scholarship in full and submit to academic integrity review at his former university. His degree was formally revoked, and he began working toward legitimate certification through community college programs. The most surprising development was Derek's personal transformation through the crisis. Stripped of artificial achievements and forced to confront the reality of his abilities, he discovered genuine talents in healthcare administration that didn't require the advanced credentials his parents had tried to purchase. I never realized how much pressure I was carrying to live up to achievements that weren't really mine, he told me during one of our cautious reconciliation conversations. In a weird way, having everything collapse was the most honest thing that ever happened to me. Our family relationships required years of careful rebuilding. Trust had been shattered by betrayal, manipulation, and criminal behavior that affected multiple generations. But something unexpected emerged from the wreckage: authentic connections based on truth rather than obligation. Jessica and I married the following spring in a ceremony attended by family members who'd learned to appreciate honesty over comfortable lies. My parents attended via video call from their respective correctional facilities, offering genuine apologies that carried the weight of real accountability. Grandmother, despite her initial shock and disappointment, became our strongest supporter for pursuing justice over family comfort. "You did the hardest thing a person can do," she told me during our engagement party. "You chose what was right over what was easy." The professional vindication was complete and decisive. My company's HR investigation concluded that the anonymous academic fraud accusations were themselves fraudulent, generated by criminal family members attempting extortion. My security clearance was upgraded. My career accelerated based on the integrity I demonstrated under extreme personal pressure. More importantly, the Scholarship Foundation implemented new fraud prevention measures that protected future applicants from the systematic manipulation my family had practiced. Real oversight now existed to ensure merit-based awards went to qualified recipients rather than connected insiders. Derek eventually found his calling in healthcare administration, building legitimate expertise through community college programs and professional certification. His work ethic improved dramatically once he understood that genuine achievement required sustained effort rather than manipulated shortcuts. Our parents emerged from incarceration changed people who understood the devastating cost of their choices. Family therapy sessions were awkward but productive, focusing on accountability rather than justification. They would never fully undo the damage they'd caused, but they committed to earning forgiveness through consistent behavioral change rather than emotional manipulation. The deepest lesson from this ordeal wasn't about family loyalty or professional success. It was about the courage required to defend truth when lies become comfortable, to choose justice when injustice benefits people we love, and to build authentic relationships through difficult honesty rather than protective deception. Real family doesn't sabotage one member's dreams to protect another's ego. Real family celebrates achievement rather than resenting it. Real family supports each other through failure rather than manufacturing artificial success through criminal behavior. Today, 5 years later, I'm a senior engineering manager leading innovative automotive projects that contribute meaningfully to American manufacturing. Jessica and I are expecting our first child, a daughter, who'll grow up understanding that integrity matters more than convenience. Derek runs a successful medical equipment consulting business built on legitimate expertise and authentic relationships. Mom works as a victim advocate for educational fraud cases, using her experience to help other families avoid the mistakes she made. Dad teaches workplace ethics seminars for community organizations, sharing hard-learned lessons about the cost of compromising values for short-term benefits. Our family gatherings are smaller now, but infinitely more honest. We discuss real challenges rather than pretending problems don't exist. We celebrate genuine achievements rather than manufactured successes. We support each other through authentic love rather than manipulative obligation. The manila envelope that changed everything sits in my home office now, a reminder that truth always emerges eventually. Hiding criminal behavior delays consequences, but never eliminates them. Protecting people from accountability enables continued harm rather than promoting growth. Justice served doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like freed victims building successful lives. Sometimes it looks like reformed criminals becoming advocates for positive change. Sometimes it looks like broken families learning to love each other authentically rather than conditionally. The most profound satisfaction isn't professional success or financial security, though both have exceeded my teenage dreams. It's the knowledge that no other qualified student will lose opportunities to the kind of systematic fraud my family practiced. It's seeing Derek succeed through his own efforts rather than purchased advantages. It's watching my parents rebuild their lives on foundations of honesty rather than manipulation. Truth-telling requires courage, especially when truth threatens people we care about. But protecting lies ultimately destroys the relationships we're trying to preserve. Authentic love demands accountability, not enablement. Real family protects each other's integrity, not each other's crimes. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal integrity? How did you find the courage to do what was right when it meant disappointing people you loved? What lessons have you learned about the difference between supporting family and enabling destructive behavior? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more true stories about overcoming family betrayal and building authentic success. Share this with anyone who might be struggling with similar family manipulation, because sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting content that explores the complex realities of family relationships. Remember that you deserve to pursue your dreams without sabotage, achieve success through legitimate effort, and build relationships based on truth rather than comfortable lies. Your authentic journey matters, and your courage to choose integrity over convenience can inspire others facing similar challenges. Keep fighting for what's right even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult.